Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I'll be reviewing the MiG-21 Bison. This is a currently 11.7 BR Rank 8 premium fighter in the Great Britain Air Force's tech tree, though of course flies under the Indian flag. The pack that it comes in currently costs $74.99 USD when not on sale, and comes with both 20 days of premium time and 2,500 Golden Eagles. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over everything that you need to know about this fighter, including its stats, how it plays, I'll give some strengths and weaknesses, I'll give it some scores in several key areas, and then I'll give my final recommendation on if I feel this vehicle is worth purchasing or not. With that said, if you like this kind of video, please consider subscribing, but without further ado, let's get into it. Now to start, I'll place a stat card here on the side of the screen. Important things to note are its armament, its turn time, and its climb rate. Now with that said, how it plays. Essentially, this vehicle has identical performance to the MiG-21 Bison, of which is currently an 11.0 BR fighter. Thankfully, the Bison can still largely hold its own in terms of performance at this BR, but starts encountering other fighters that can outperform it, such as F-16s and various other high BR fighters. The big upgrades for the Bison that bring it to 11.7 BR are a much better radar, substantially improved missiles, a helmet-mounted display, and even the replacement of standard-sized countermeasures with large caliber countermeasures. All of these upgrades are very noticeable and make a huge impact on gameplay. Because this is a MiG-21, it still retains its excellent turning capability, but now has the inclusion of a helmet-mounted sight, of which aims missiles wherever your camera is pointed, rather than wherever the plane itself is pointed, as well as of course R-73E missiles. These missiles are thrust vectoring and have IRCCM, which gives you a huge advantage while in a turning fight versus almost any other aircraft that you can fight. Unfortunately, you can only carry 2 R-73Es, though you can at least also carry 2 R-27 missiles, of which come in IR guided and radar guided flavors. These are your longer range options and perform very well in that role, with the R-27R being a medium range radar guided missile and the R-27T being a fire and forget IR guided missile, though with a bit less practical range than the R-27R, despite the fact that the stat cards show them as being identical in that regard. This is due to the T variant tracking heat signatures, which are, by their nature in War Thunder, things that require closer range, especially when you're not directly behind the enemy. Regardless, the Bison again flies like the MiG-21 Bison, with good performance and turning rates, though with awful energy bleed while in turns. As other fighters around this BR have similar turning capabilities without the lag that the Bison has in order to regain speed, this becomes a problem for the Bison, though again, it is largely made up for with the inclusion of the HMD and R-73E missiles, being that typically you won't have to continue turning, you should be able to just use your HMD, and again, those thrust vectoring missiles to hopefully destroy an enemy before you lose all of your speed. In short though, the Bison is a close quarter specialist at a BR where doing such things is increasingly difficult. It can act as a medium range fighter, but those capabilities are limited due to the total number of radar guided missiles that it can carry. Now for close air support, the Bison is a bit more basic. While it can carry pretty decent ordnance, namely in its 500 kilogram TV guided bombs and also S-24 unguided rockets, the Bison has a very limited payload, weight, and only 4 hardpoints. As such, you cannot equip a CAS loadout consisting purely of the best weapons that it has available, as the 1300 kilogram payload will limit you from doing so. If nothing else, the Bison can still use ballistic computers to get in close to enemies to either drop a 500 kilogram bomb or a number of rockets, ranging from S5K rocket pods to S24s. In terms of CAS, the Bison is very limited, but at least has some capabilities, as well as some guided weaponry. Now with that said, let's get into its strengths and weaknesses, and first for its strengths. Despite having the same engine as the MiG-21 Bison, which is nearly a full BR lower than the Bison is still thankfully quite quick to accelerate and fast overall. Second, the helmet-mounted display allows you to target enemies with your missiles based on where your camera is aimed. This is a huge advantage, especially with the highly maneuvering missiles that the Bison carries. Third, this vehicle can carry 2 500 kilogram TV guided bombs, as well as many different types of ordnance, from dumb bombs ranging from 100 to 500 kilograms, and again rockets ranging from the S5K to S24s. For its 4th strength, speaking of, the Bison has ballistics computers for both bombs and rockets, as well as for the cannon when the radar locks onto an enemy and you get to within around 1 kilometer. For its 5th strength, this vehicle has a fairly good radar that is substantially improved over the one on the BIS. This allows for relatively smooth guidance on the R-27R radar-guided missiles. Beyond this, the MiG-21 Bison has excellent turning capabilities, and should be able to outturn most enemies that it encounters, at least for a short while. For its 7th strength, this vehicle features excellent air-to-air missiles, with the R-27Es being excellent for close range, and both the R-27T and R-27R being great for both short and medium range. For its 8th strength, the Bison can carry up to 3 external fuel tanks, though only one will not take up pylons that could otherwise be used for ordnance. Beyond this vehicle has a very good roll rate, especially at higher speeds. And finally, the Bison features premium RP and SL bonuses. Now with that said, let's get into its weaknesses. And first, while the acceleration is good, the airframe itself isn't able to keep up with it while near sea level and will break apart at over 1400 kilometers per hour, which can be an issue while higher BR enemy planes, such as the F-16, can pursue you beyond those speeds without any issues. Second, this vehicle only has 60 countermeasures, but again, at least they're large caliber and thus a bit more effective than standard countermeasures. For its 3rd weakness, as with all MiG-21s, the energy bleed on the Bison is ridiculous when in turns and will make it difficult to stay in a dogfight with an enemy for long, especially versus more modern planes like the F-16, as they do not suffer from this issue nearly as badly and still have great maneuverability. Fourth, the Bison only has access to 4 missiles at most, which is a fairly low amount at this BR. Additionally, there are only 4 hardpoints for ordnance against ground vehicles, which limits total effectiveness in terms of CAS. For its 5th weakness, the 23mm cannon equipped on this vehicle only has 200 rounds, which itself is a low total, and still it even has 50 fewer rounds than what you see on the BIS. And finally, only 1300 kilograms of ordnance can be carried on this vehicle, which severely limits the already somewhat limited ordnance options that this plane has. Now with all that said, let's get into how I score this vehicle. And first, for air RB and dogfighting, I give it a 6.25 out of 10. The Bison represents what is, for the time being, the dying breath of Turnfighters in War Thunder. It specializes in close quarters combat while still maintaining the ability to go long when necessary via its R-27 missiles. Because of this, it is a bit of an anachronism at its BR, but it can still do well thanks to its excellent missile options. While the engine and overall performance are becoming lackluster at this BR, the Bison is still just fast enough to compete at high tier, so long as you do not lose all of your energy in a turn fight, as most high BR aircraft can regain energy faster than the Bison could ever hope to do. Overall, while not fantastic, the Bison is a thoroughly capable fighter that benefits from a down and dirty sort of playstyle, even as high BRs are becoming ever more sterile with their longer and longer range missiles. Oh, and the helmet mounted display is an absolute blessing in this thing. It is ridiculously powerful when used in tandem with those R-73E thrust vectoring missiles. Now for close air support, I give it a 3.25 out of 10. No matter how much modernization you put into a MiG-21, the fact remains, it's still a MiG-21. This is especially true for its CAS capabilities, as the Bison can carry fairly decent weaponry, especially with its TV-guided bombs, but just not much of them. The limit of 4 hardpoints, as well as only 1300 kilograms of carrying weight, makes this vehicle somewhat mediocre in terms of CAS. Is it bad? Not really, but the only reason why it even scores this high is because it has access to TV-guided bombs, which are, at this BR, becoming fairly common. Still, it can be used in a pinch fairly successfully, and is still the only premium aircraft in the Great Britain air tech tree with any sort of reliable smart ordnance, even if the Bison only gets 2 500-kilogram TV-guided bombs with fairly low amounts of explosive filler equivalent. If nothing else, the Bison is still good for air cover and can take out both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft with ease. Now overall, I give it a 5.5 out of 10. As stated before, the Bison is an anachronism. Whereas airframes are developing alongside their weapons in most instances, the Bison is an old aircraft with new teeth. Thankfully, at its BR, it can still be fairly competitive in a somewhat similar way with how the F-5E FCU squadron vehicle performs. While it has a limited amount of ordnance, it can still perform more than well enough, especially given its its helmet-mounted display, as well as its R-73E and R-27 missiles. CAS is able to be done with some success with the Bison, but it is always going to be on the lower tiers of CAS aircraft at this BR. It isn't terrible in that role, but it really isn't good. Because of these things, the Bison is overall a very good aircraft, but is likely a little more niche than some of the higher BR premium aircraft that you can choose from. Now with that said, do I recommend the purchase of the MiG-21 Bison? For some people, I do recommend it. I just so happen to love the MiG-21 playstyle, even though the airframe is definitely long in the tooth by the time it reaches the Bison. Because of this, I had a lot of fun and a decent amount of success with this aircraft, though still less success than with other aircraft like the Tiger Shark. It is great for those who like to play angrily and aggressively, but not so much for those who are more methodical. The Bison simply isn't robust enough of an aircraft for a large amount of players to fully enjoy. In comparison, the F-20A Tiger Shark is a very similar BR premium aircraft and for the most part totally outshines the Bison. It is simply far more capable, despite only having AIM-9Ls and AIM-7Fs, as it also has a very good CAS aspect to it and has better performance characteristics in Air RB, as well as still having very capable missiles, despite technically being a bit worse than what the Bison has to offer. Simply put, the Bison will likely be a favorite aircraft for people with road rage or who like to shout at their TV during sporting events. I personally love it, but I recognize that the Bison has limitations, mainly in total ordnance weight and energy bleed while in turns. So because of these things, I will recommend this vehicle for purchase for those who love the aforementioned close range fighting in Air RB and don't so much mind having a somewhat limited CAS aircraft. I even give it my Tankenstein seal of approval because it is more of a do I like it award rather than a straight up recommendation. I'll say that unless you're an old school dogfight lover, you may want to stay away from this vehicle. It's a ton of fun, but can be a bit like taking a muscle car that doesn't have power steering around a racetrack that has a lot of turns. For more sane people, I'd still say that this is worth a look to purchase, though only when on sale. It just unfortunately isn't a full package, and that's something that you look for at higher BRs. Now with that said, thank you all so much for watching. If you don't mind, please consider liking and subscribing, as well as telling me what you think about the Bison and my review of it in the comments below. Either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care everyone.